Hey everybody, so this is just a very brief and very uh, cursory overview of transition, like what that is, what it entails, the things included, sort of our philosophy in the field of special education on transition. Um, and because I don't know that everybody has had transition classes before. So I just want to give an overview to give some context for this class and the services, employment and career prep services that um, transition teachers and secondary SPED teachers and transition specialists and supported employment coaches and all the people involved in this field would need to know. So here we go, very quick and dirty transition overview. There we go. So what is transition? Transition, as defined by the IDEA, which is the law that governs special education for pre-K through 12th graders, states that transition is the period of time / the services and events that happen during the time period between high school and after. So high school into adulthood. So that includes lots of different services. It's so important because it really is like the rest of your life, or our students' lives, folks with disabilities. All of us, when we exit high school, it's like a huge milestone, rite of passage. It's our entrance into adulthood and all the things that come with that. So it's really like the beginning of the rest of your life. IDEA transition services, and this has been updated since, but this is the 2004 IDEA. It basically is a coordinated set of activities designed within a results-oriented process that is focused on improving academic functional achievement of those with disabilities to facilitate that movement from school to post-school activities. And so that could be post-secondary education, a typical college experience. It could be an IPSE, like an inclusive post-secondary education opportunity like Carolina Life is. It could be vocational education. It could be integrated employment, which can include supported employment, which we will talk about in this class. Other continuing and adult education opportunities, things like, courses at Midlands Tech that are non-degree seeking, other things. Adult services, so that could include VR, voc rehab, but also it can include services through DDSN, independent living sort of services, in Columbia and in the state of South Carolina, ABLE SC does a good job of providing services in regards to independent living and other adult services, as well as supported employment and career stuff. And then community participation, right? It's like all the things that make up a person's participation in adult life. So transition to where, right? Like the word transition outside of the realm of special education sort of implicates somebody's moving into a different area, not necessarily a place, but in this instance, it's like community life, right? So employment is a piece of that, education is a piece of that, and living life situations, place that can include a place, of course. All of those are pieces of transition. So the philosophy of transition, typicality, right? What is success? Like people don't want to be segregated. People don't want to be treated as special. So, what does a typical human being with or without a disability want from adult life? That's what our transition philosophy is. Work should be as typical as possible. Learning should be as typical as possible, and living should be as typical as possible, and as integrated into the community as possible. So the least segregation, the least special, the better. What is the intent? So to help the student, and this is sort of like the specific to the transition process that's instigated hopefully back in middle school, but typically doesn't begin to be instigated or implemented as a process until high school. But it's basically to get the student and family to think about what is life after high school going to look like. A lot of folks, if you're living crisis to crisis, if you are just trying to come to grips with a disability diagnosis or all sorts of other things that life throws at you, then you may not be thinking that far in advance. But that is the intent of the transition process. And then to encourage team collaboration in identifying those long-range outcomes of the student's life, we would hope that that is student-centered and student-led. From my experience and from what the research tells us, that's not necessarily the case, but that is the hope for all folks to have agency over their own outcomes and their own goals and what their life will look like. And then if when it's in the high school setting, it's to design high school experiences that enable the student to gain the skills and community connections that will maximize success, which ultimately, if you think about it, is the goal for all high school students, right? We all need to skill build and build connections and networks within the community in order to be successful in adult life. So the current trends in transition are not necessarily all good, but they are in a lot of ways better than our history. So the supports paradigm basically says that we want to support a person in all of their goals, ideals, things that they want for their own life, as opposed to dictating or segregating. Self-determination is a big piece of that. Somebody being self-determined knows what they want, and then hopefully the agency to attain those goals comes with self-determination. Creating meaningful opportunities prior to transition. So that's a big piece of it, and that's a big piece of what career development and job employment skills for students with disabilities should be, is that this starts way before they exit high school. So young adults in middle school and early high school all throughout should have opportunities to be employed, whether that be just like school-based employment or community employment. But it should be like real as well. It shouldn't be segregated settings. It shouldn't be contrived learning or non-authentic experiences. Recognizing the importance of real life. So again, nothing contrived or inauthentic in terms of the services and supports. Consumer directed. So that's, the consumer is the person with the disability. So they are directing their services and supports that they need, and making sure that that fits what they want. Supported and customized employment. Those are both some terms that we will explore further in this course. And then collaborative service delivery. So, right, all the people working to ensure that employment and independent living and education are all working together. So of that, there has been a value shift. We don't want folks with disabilities don't want for themselves to be working in a facility or a segregated workshop, sheltered workshop. Sorry, that was the term I was looking for. These jobs and opportunities should be just in the community, right? In neighborhoods, businesses, schools, stores, everywhere but where everyone else in the community works and lives. And then the transition has also had a value shift from trainer to facilitator. So the person who's supporting all of these opportunities for folks with disabilities aren't there to necessarily train, although that can be a piece of it, but more so they are viewed as the facilitator of the opportunity. So they make things easier and make things free from obstacles, and ensure that a student or a young adult with a disability knows how to advocate for their needs and their supports that they need to be successful. A person who is a job coach or a job facilitator or supported employment personnel, they work more behind the scenes. They're less intrusive, they're less hands-on, they're supportive where needed, but not overbearing and not necessarily a trainer. And then there's, in that value shift, we've gone from the term feasible, it's feasible to it's presumed, right? Like all human beings have valid work that they can participate in. It shifts the responsibility from if we can make it work for them too, it will work if we find the right environment with the right supports. And then we've had a paradigm or a value shift from the term fit in to person-centered. So that means a number of things on a couple different levels, but on a very just basic employment level, right? It means we're going to facilitate the environment and maybe make changes to the environment or supports provided within the environment so that the person is successful. Not we're going to alter the person so that he or she fits into the environment. And that goes along with these two models. So the medical model states that the disability is located within the individual. So the person with the disability is broken or sick and needs fixing or curing or altering in some way so that they fit in and can make their life in the community work for them. Whereas we in special education and in this field prescribe to the social model of disability, which states that it's not necessarily that the person with the disability that's the problem, it's the environment. In our environment, in our country, in our world, is not set up to accommodate folks with disabilities in so many different ways. And so it's the environment really that prevents people from having the access and the opportunities to live a quote unquote typical life integrated with everybody else. So that can mean very physical, concrete things like buildings not being accessible, but it can also mean communication styles. Education is not, our education system does not cater to folks with disabilities as well as it should. So lots of different pieces of our environment are not as accessible for folks with disabilities, and that's the social model as opposed to the medical model that states that the problem is within the person. So some terms that you'll hear in this course and lots of courses across your course of study: supports, support need, and then services. And then support planning. So this is, hopefully collaborative with the individual with the disability and then all other people that may be on that person's support team. So identifying resources and strategies to bridge the gap between challenges and opportunities. So think about, as we get into this course, what is your paradigm of disability? What has it been thus far, and what do you hope it to evolve into as you someday probably enter into the field of special education in some way, shape, or form? And how does the supports paradigm fit with your current or future work? And that is it for that presentation. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context and some of the terms that we use in the field, some of well, that's one of the terms, supports, and ways in which we facilitate integration, community integration for folks with disabilities. And this course will hopefully enlighten us on the ways in which career and employment development is a piece of that transition for folks with disabilities. Thanks, guys.